Now, just about an hour ago, before this latest, now we're learning the Army has suspended Egypt's constitution. So it appears that Morsi is out. But prior to this announcement, which has just taken place, we spoke to our friend, former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, John Bolton, and I asked him for his take on what was going on just as short as an hour ago.
Honestly, we've had a lot of reports about what's happened in Cairo that have been contradicted a few hours later. So I think from a distance, it's going to be difficult to see what's happening. But I think the situation really is on a knife's edge here. The Morsi Mohammed Brotherhood, Muslim Brotherhood side is basically dug in and said they're not going to give up. The opposition, which is concerned that the Brotherhood may never agree to another election again ever, doesn't want to give up. The military, really, in my view, is not happy about having to intervene, but they can see unless something happens, instability is just going to continue. So you have a lot of confusion, divisions among the different political factions, but tensions and emotions very high. This could get very ugly quickly, unfortunately.
Whose side are we on? I mean, you know, you and I have talked many times about Barack Obama and the Muslim Brotherhood, and of course, I don't believe Mubarak could have been ousted without our support, and I don't think Morsi could have ever gotten elected without the United States support to one extent or another. But the aid that we give to Egypt, if I'm not mistaken, goes almost directly to the military. We in effect, have, if we don't control their military, certainly we have huge, you would think, influence because we give them the $1 billion a year. We've just sold them and given them all kinds of sophisticated military equipment. So do we have maybe undue influence on the military? And if we do or don't, whose side are we on anyway?
Well, we should have considerable influence on the military for all the assistance we've given over the past 30-plus years. But even in just his 12 months in power, Mohammed Morsi has tried to stack the military with officers friendly to the Muslim Brotherhood. And I think we'll soon see whether he's had much success or not. It doesn't appear that he has so far. But I think trying to analyze what U.S. policy should be has to start with what we think American interests are. And trying to get into the complexities of Egyptian politics is not very productive from my point of view. You know, the crowds that are demonstrating against Morsi think that Obama is on Morsi's side. That's based on remarks our ambassador in Egypt has made. And so it's a fine irony that having helped push Mubarak out of office, now we're accused of defending the next authoritarian leader. But I think America's interests are, number one, making sure that Egypt, under whatever government, continues to uphold the Camp David peace accords with Israel. That's a foundation stone of our policy in the Middle East. And number two, that, again, whatever government is in control keeps the Suez Canal open. Now, my guess in the middle of this confused situation is that the military is most likely to care about stability and order. That doesn't mean they're Jeffersonian Democrats, far from it. But we're not in Scarsdale, New York now. You know, we're in the middle of a very complex and potentially lethal situation in cities all across Egypt. So I think we ought to be trying to use that leverage we have with the military, try and get some order restored, and then see where we go from there.
Mr. Ambassador, is this just another example of Barack Obama's foreign policy inadequacies?
I think it is. I think it's, unfortunately, the last 2 years in dealing with the Arab Spring in general and Egypt in particular has demonstrated the president I'd like to talk about the Obama foreign policy. I don't think he has one. I think it's completely incoherent. I don't think he pays enough attention. I think he thinks he can do foreign policy and national security on the spur of the moment. And I think the series of ad hoc decisions he's made with respect to Egypt show that not only does that not work, but that it doesn't get through to him that he's got a problem. You know, let's come back to Mubarak last 2 years ago. Before coming out unequivocally for Mubarak to step down, in about a 30-day period, the administration had 4 different positions. So they confused everybody and didn't get the support of the opponents to Mubarak that they wanted because nobody could figure out what the position was. I think we're in a very similar place right now, and ultimately that's going to redound to our detriment.
Now, one final thing on Egypt. Morsi's advisor has been quoted around the globe today as saying that a military coup is underway. What would that look like, and what would happen if there were, in fact, a military takeover that would knock somehow Morsi out of power?
Well, I think what people speculate, and again, there are a lot of reports that change hour by hour, but what people speculate is not that the military, not some general, not the defense minister, General al-Sisi, would directly take control, but they'd put technocrats in control to try and get the economy out of the basement while they then considered what to do with a new constitution and new elections. And, for example, one of the things that's up in the air now is whether the military has taken control of Cairo's radio and television station. That would obviously be a key step in the military having control, or at least preventing others from taking control of it for their purposes. So I think we're going to see this through the day and evening, a lot of uncertainty about exactly what's happening in the country.
We're talking to Ambassador John Bolton here on the Steve Malzberg Show. We had an incident yesterday where the president of Bolivia had his plane denied airspace by several countries and was forced to land, and then it was searched in Austria, and they were looking for Edward Snowden. Now, how do you interpret this, sir? Was this done at the behest of the United States, and this was after Obama said he wouldn't scramble jets to get some 28-year-old hacker? What went on here?
Well, this is really rich. After the French and others have criticized us for spying on the European Union, another one of the Edward Snowden leaks, then the French turn around and deny permission for the president of Bolivia to fly through their airspace, forcing him to land in Austria. I think because of a tip by somebody, maybe by us, that Snowden was on the plane. Now, it doesn't appear that he was. But I think it shows Snowden is becoming a man without a country, which doesn't bother me at all, given what he's done. And interestingly, I think this whole leak about the European Union shows the anti-American nature of the WikiLeaks people who have surrounded Snowden and maybe were working with him even before the first publication of his information. If you ask most Americans, what do you think about conducting espionage against the European Union, I think they'd say, fine, what's the problem? What could be wrong with that? It was intended, the leak was intended to outrage the Europeans and press that anti-American button. That's not the mark. Looking at Snowden, that's not the mark of some person trying to alert Americans to the threat from their government. That is the mark of an anti-American propaganda campaign.
All right. James Clapper today apologized for what he called the erroneous answer on NSA surveillance, which he gave to the Congress, to Senator Wyden back in March 12th congressional hearing. He was asked if the NSA collects any types of data at all on millions or hundreds of millions of Americans, and he said categorically no. And now he said basically he was wrong. He made a mistake. He didn't count the NSA, whatever. How do you interpret that?
Well, I think Clapper's performance here has been an embarrassment from start to finish. The question about what NSA was doing by Senator Wyden was a gotcha question. It never should have been asked in public. The fact that Clapper was told the day before that the question was going to be asked makes his answer in the open testimony even more bizarre. The only answer that he could properly give was, Senator, I can't discuss that in an open session. And that, of course, is part of the gotcha nature of the question. What the administration should have done was gone to Wyden or the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee and said, look, we're not going to play politics on this. If you want to talk about that, we'll do it in a closed session. But Clapper's argument that he gave the least inaccurate answer, that he misunderstood that just, in my mind, makes him look even more foolish than he is already, which is saying something.
Any 4th of July plans for you, sir?
No, I'm going to stick around home. I've been on the road a lot, so I plan to enjoy it with my family and probably go down to Fox News 2 or 3 times over the weekend.
Sounds good. We'll be watching, and thank you for your time as always.